everyone, welcome back to my channel Code with Hafiz. My name is Hafizullah Masoudi, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can create and store data using Vuex store. Because as you remember in our previous video, we worked on how to install Vuex into our Laravel 8 application and also how to fetch data from the Vuex central store. So in this video we will work on how you can create or store data using Vuex store. So let's start, guys. As you guys can see, this is our dashboard, and in here we are getting the users data, all the users table, by fetching the data using Vuex store. Now what we will do is make it more user friendly, because for now it's only showing the username. Well, we want to create, let's suppose, a table for the users and then a button for create user if the user wants to create a new user, and let's suppose we then work on the edit functionality and also the delete functionality. So for that, first let's create the table. So let's open our project in the text editor, and in here what we can do is go to this resources, views and home blade, because this is where we are fetching the data. As you guys can see, we have this v4 loop, and for now we only have this paragraph tag. So what we can do is comment this paragraph tag, and let's press enter here and create a table with a class of table and another class of table border to give it borders, and press enter. Now inside here let's declare our t-head first. Now let's declare the tr and then th. Well, let's duplicate it. The first one should be for the count, the next one let's say name, this one should be email, and this one should be actions. Now the next part is, guys, to create the t-body. So let's say t-body after the t-head, and inside this t-body let's create a tr and then td. Let's duplicate it 4 times. Now what we can do is copy the for loop from here. So let's copy it with the key also and paste it to this tr, and let's save it. Now inside here what we can do is declare the @ because we are using Vue.js, and then inside here we have this users variable or object dot. Well, this one should be for the index, so let's say index +1 to start from 1, and in here we can say @ double braces user dot name for the name, and in here @ double braces user dot email, and in here we will create 2 links. So let's say for now edit and delete. Save it. Now if we go back to the browser, refresh, we should get the data as we write it. As you can see, now it's looking good. Now let's create a button in here which will open a model for us, a bootstrap model, and then we will handle how to store the user data using Vuex store. So for that, let's go to the bootstrap site. So for that, let's search for bootstrap, and in here let's go to this first link. Let's go to this docs, and in here let's search for model. Now let's open this first link, and in here if we scroll down a little bit, well, this is the example model, but the one that we want is this one. Let's suppose we want this model. So what we can do is copy all the code and get back to the text editor, and in here, well, let's suppose we want to paste the model at the top of the table, or let's paste it with this card header. So let's get back to the text editor, and this is the card header. For now it only says the dashboard, but let's remove the dashboard for now paste the model code and let's indent it also a little bit. Now what we can do is, for the button, let's give it a class, and let's give it a class of float right. Then at the top, after the card header, let's create an h5, and in here let's say dashboard, and let's also give it a class of float left. Save it. Now if we get back, refresh, well, the model is working but the float is not working. So let's see what is the problem. Float right. Oh, this should be float, OAT. Save it. Now we get back, refresh, it should work. Well, it's still not working. Well, let's create a row. So let's get back to the text editor, and in here inside this card header, let's create a row and then two col MDs, two col MD of 6, and let's duplicate it, and inside the first one let's put the dashboard, and inside the second one let's put the model button. Let's put the model button in here, and let's also indent it a little bit. Now if we get back, refresh, it should be good to go, but it is still not floating the button to the right. Well, let's suppose we don't need this one, but for the column D6 let's say text right. Well, it's still not working. Well guys, let's leave it as it is. Now the next thing is to change the button text. So let's get back to text editor, and in here let's say create user, and now let's work on the model itself. Well, for the title let's say create new user, and if we get back to the browser, refresh, yeah, create new user. Now let's work on this 3 dots. So let's get back to the text editor, and instead of these 3 dots, what we want is input fields to store the user data. So let's suppose we are storing 3 data for the users: one name, one email, and a password. So for that we have to create some input fields here. So let's say dot form dash group, and inside here let's create a label for, let's say, name, and in here let's say name. Then let's create an input with the type of text and with the name of, let's say, or we don't need the name because we will be handling the store method using Vuex or Ajax. So in here what we need is, let's say, a class which should be equal to form dash control, and then what we need is v dash model, which should be equal to, let's say, user data dot name. Now let's duplicate this form group 2 times. Next one should be for the email. Let's say email, and the type should be email, and let's say the user data email. And the third one should be for, let's say, password, and name, instead of name let's say password, and for the type of the input let's say password. Form control is correct, and instead of name for the v model let's say password. Now if we get back to the browser, refresh, we are getting an error, and that is because of the view models. So let's get back to the text editor, and what we can do is go to the JS app.js, and as you can see we are in here getting everything from the store. So what we can do is create everything in the store. So let's open our store also, which is in store folder store.js. And what we will do is create a state here. So let's say user data, and then curly braces, and inside here let's say name, which is an empty string, email is also an empty string, and password is also an empty string. Now what we will do is now bind this Vuex states with our home blade vModels. So we can do that in the app.js, and in here we can get the states using computed properties. So in here just put a comma, and let's say user data parenthesis curly braces, and then return this dot $store. Then we can say state dot user data, and don't forget to run your yarn run watch. So open the terminal, and inside here let's say yarn run watch to compile all the changes. So guys, the changes have been compiled successfully, and gratefully we don't have any errors. So now if we get back to the browser and hard reload, we should get the user's data back, and you can see it's working. And if we go to the inspect, we should get the binded Vuex states also, and we should go to this view dev tools. If you don't have this, go to the Chrome store and install this extension. Let's go to root. You can see we have this computed user data property, which has 3 fields: email, name, and password. And if I write something in here, you can see it is changing the state, which means our binding is working just fine. Now the next part is, guys, to bind an event to the save changes button. And instead of the save changes, let's also say create, or let's say store. So let's get back to the text editor and go to home blade, and in here what we can do is, if we scroll down, yeah, this is the button. So let's first change the text. Let's say store, and for the type let's remove it, but instead let's say add click should equal to, let's say save user, or let's say store user. Now what we can do is create this method in our app.js. So let's go to app.js, and after the computed property, let's say comma methods and curly braces, and inside here let's create the store user method or function. And inside this function what we want is call the store. So we can do that by saying this dot $store, and what we want to call is the actions, because we want to store the data using store actions. So for that we can say dispatch, and what we want to give the action the name, let's say store user. Now let's create this store user action in store.js file. So if we scroll down, we have this get users action. Now in here let's put a comma, and let's say store user, and then colon, and in here let's say context, or instead of context, guys, what we can do is declare the curly braces, and for that we can say comment comma state. When you want to use multiple objects in the store, you can do it like this, and then if you have any data coming to this dispatch, you can put a comma after the curly braces and put your data here. But in our case we don't need the data, so we will remove it now. It was just for the reference. Now let's create the function, so which should be equal to the curly braces, and inside here what we can do is call the Axios action. So Axios dot post, and then API slash, let's say store user, and let's put a comma here and send the state data, which is at the top, which is this user data. And as you can see, we are passing the state to this function also, so we have access to the state. So let's say state dot user data, and then we can say then response, and the response should be equal to curly braces, let's console log the response dot data, and let's also declare the catch for the errors. So catch errors should equal to curly braces console.log errors. Now what we can do is create this store user route. So let's go to the api.php. So routes api.php, and in here if we scroll down, you can see we have this get users route. So what we can do is duplicate this one. Instead of get method, let's say post, and let's say store user, and let's say this one should go to controllers API user controller, but instead of users, let's say store user. Now let's create this method in the controller. So let's scroll to the top, go to the app folder, http controllers API user controller. Now in here what we can do is create a function. So let's press enter, public function store user, and we have request coming from the form. So request $request, and in here let's just for now return the request arrow all, and save it. Now if we get back to the browser, let's refresh and check the data if it works. So let's go to console and let's try to submit a new user. So let's say admin at app.com, password is password, and let's say store. As you guys can see, now it's working. We are returning the store data. So now let's save this data to the database. So let's get back to the text editor, and instead of this return request, what we can do is let's say create colon or not create guys, user colon create, and then parenthesis, then array, and we want to store the name, which should be equal to request arrow name, and then comma email, and it should be equal to this is $, request arrow email, and then comma, this one should be email, and then let's say password, which should be equal to, let's make it hash colon hash make, and then let's say parenthesis request arrow password, and let's put our semicolon, and at the bottom let's say return response JSON success. Now let's import this user model and hash at the top. So we are already getting the user model, but let's say use hash. Now the next part is guys to check these three fields if they are passed as fillable in the user model. So we can go to the models and user model, and if we scroll down, you can see we have this protected fillable name, email and password, which is good to go. So now if we get back to the browser and refresh the page, now if we try to submit or create a new user, so let's click on this, let's say admin at app.com, password is password, and press enter, or let's click on this store. As you guys can see, now we get the success message, and if we open a new tab and go to PHP my admin, so let's go to PHP my admin, our user should have been created. So let's go to the root username and go to Laravel 8 auth. Let's go to users. As you guys can see, our admin account has been created, and this is the password. Well, for the model, as you guys can see now, it doesn't close the model, so we can handle this. Well, we can go back to the text editor and close the model. So first of all, let's close this user model and let's go to home.blade, and if we check in here, let's say we want to check the model and its ID is example model. So let's copy this, and because we have jQuery also installed, so we can go to app.js, and in here after we dispatch the store user action, we can close the model in here. So we can say $, parenthesis, quotation, and then hashtag, then the example model ID, then dot model, and then parenthesis, then we can say hide. And if we save the file, go back, let's refresh and check our code if it works. And one thing more guys, we also have to update the table, so let's do that also. Let's get back to the text editor. Well, we can update that in the store.js. So let's get back to the store, and in here we are just only showing the response to the console, but we want to call this get users action. So we can do that by passing dispatch in here. So what we have to do is, let's pass the dispatch in here too. So dispatch comma commit, and in here we can say, let's say dispatch, then get underscore users. So changes have been compiled successfully. Now if we get back to the browser, let's hard reload, and now let's try to add a user. So let's click on this create new user. Let's say this one should be user at app.com, and password should be password. Store. As you guys can see, our user has been created, model has been closed, and table has been updated. So guys, this was how to create the store functionality using Vue.js and Vuex store. So I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and if you enjoyed watching the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share the video with your friends. And if you didn't have subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe to my channel to not miss any updates and be the first one to receive the videos. So thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next video.